And let me give you a little brief background on Monty. Monty comes to us from Brandon, Mississippi. He was born, raised, and educated in Montana, earned his BS and MS in geology from the University of Montana, then an Army-funded PhD in geosciences and geology from Oregon State University. Hence, he is known in some circles as Dr. Rock. Monty is a 20-year Army veteran, served 12 years in the combat arms as an armor officer, and finished his career in the Corps of Engineers. After retiring from the Army in 1994, he started a consulting company and then accepted a tenured position in Oregon State University in the Department of Geosciences and Geology. He eventually retired from OSU in 2018, and he moved to his current home in Mississippi. Like most of us, Lionel trains got things going. He advanced to HO and HON3 and then made the giant leap up to ON3 plus ON2. Then he upscaled again and to his current scale, which is 1/24th N3 and N2. Just a few months ago, along with Alan Pollock, they formed a new large-scale group called, and I quote, "Is it big enough yet?" unquote, to encourage manufacturers to produce large-scale craftsman kits. Monty has served as chairman of two national narrow gauge conventions in Portland, the 1999 convention and the 2008 convention. His obsession with the Yankee Girl began after a visit to the Silverton area in 1995, and it has lasted to this day. He now spends most of his time working at rebuilding the Bohica Mining Railroad in 1/24th N2, plus completing a model of the Yankee Girl just last year. Okay, Monty, I turn it over to you. If you will share your screen, sir, you've got the floor.
As Pete said, this started with the quest many years ago. To build the Yankee Girl Mine, I discovered it, but in doing so, I came across this little railroad, and I think it's probably the ideal railroad to build. So this is a two-part clinic, very abbreviated because you only got about 25 minutes. And as a normal college professor, I can't talk anything in that amount of time. But researching the Yankee Girl, and it's AKA Dixie Belle because my wife is a Dixie Belle, and we can't have anything Yankee in the South down here, so it became Dixie Belle in 1/24. In finding all the photos of the Yankee Girl so I could build it, came across the Silverton Railroad. Perfect railroad to model. There's something there for everybody. The guy who wants to operate, or guys who want to operate, the builders, and even people like me that want to play with dirt. I'm sure that we've all been to the Yankee Girl on Red Mountain. The railroad is only 16.5 miles long. It operated from 1888 to 1921. And here's pictures of the Yankee Girl we see today. As I said, I discovered it years ago. Quest to build it sat dormant for about 45 years until Rich and Ron Rans from Berkshire Garden offered an O-scale and an HO kit. And after many bottles of wine over a 2 or 3 year period, I got him to cut me a frame of the Yankee Girl so I could basically build the interior, sheet it, and do all that stuff to build the mine. In researching the mine, I came across the 3 railroads naturally that come out of Silverton. And the Silverton Railroad actually goes up over Red Mountain and onto the, as I call, the sunny side of Red Mountain. And that's where the Yankee Girl lives. And so that's the railroad. Besides, it has everything you need in a model railroad, as I said. You got operations. It had 2 passenger trains a day, 3 to 4 ore trains daily, and a mixed train. Builders, it had mills, mines, support buildings. And by support buildings, I mean ore bins, coal bins. They didn't use the normal tipple complexes that you see in most of Colorado. And for people who like to build trestles, had 19 trestles. They were small towns and even had jails. And then people who want to play with dirt, they had cliffs, waterfalls, alluvial fans, steep canyons, steep slopes, and yes, there were even a few trees left. Let's take a little ride on the Silverton. As you come into Silverton. You come into the Red Mountain on the Silverton Railroad. You're coming in from Silverton, Colorado. You come into Red Mountain Town. Here's the first Y, and you've got a mine complex up on the hill slope and the town down in this area here. And in the center of the Y, you've got a depot and a 2-stall outhouse. You leave Red Mountain and you go to really the guts of the operation. You go to Gaston Town, and there's where the Yankee Girl is. And the Yankee Girl wasn't just a mine, it was a complex of mines. And the first part you come to is the Gaston and Vanderbilt mine complex, and then you hit the Yankee Girl Mine, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about all that. But if you leave Gaston Town, you fly out of here on a railroad, then you hit the world's famous corkscrew turntable, a 50-foot turntable in a 62-foot house. You come down to what is called the Joker U-turn or Joker Tunnel area, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about why this is important. You roll out of here and you hit the big metropolis of Ironton. So as you look at the dates of operation, you see that there weren't a lot of cars, so you could go out in a purely capitalistic mode and buy all the Berkshire Valley's wagons and have a heck of a good time, and maybe a few Model Ts, and you can just build to your little heart's content. Let's talk about the rolling stock. They had three C16s, and everybody who wants a geared engine, they had one 2-truck, 2-cylinder Shay. Want to build cars? They had 10, 20-foot boxcars. They had 37 to 50, 24-foot boxcars. They had 5 gondola cars. Mainly, all these gondola cars did was bring coal into the area and transport it around and supplied the power source to the mill. Cabooses? No one really knows how many cabooses they had because they don't talk about them. But you see pictures of them, and they all look about the same. Coach cars, they had a couple of those. They had a combine car, they had passenger cars, and maintenance vehicles and cars. Let's take a look at some of the scenery. You come out of Silverton, you come up the canyon, you hit the town of Chattanooga. There was a mine and a mill, basically a one street, and some buildings and some tents. You come out of there, you get into Red Mountain Town, and here you got a one street town, typical mountain western town in the 1880s, 1890s. This had one street, hardware store, a couple saloons, houses for the miners to live in. And on the hill slope above the town was the mine. All the neat things you want to do when you build a mine. You got a crib wall, wood. You could modify that to stone if you so desire. You got large talus slopes. You got the station in the center of the Y with the outhouse. So as we move out of Red Mountain, heading toward Gaston, that's where the main complex was. This is in about 1880. And if you look, this is the Silverton Yankee Girl complex. To the right, which is on the photo, is the Vanderbilt, as it was normally called, mining complex. Not as large as the Silverton, but look at what you've got here. You've got the Yankee Girl, which is interesting shape. You've got warehouses, large talus debris slopes from waste rocks material, houses for the miners to live in, storage sheds, a large 2-boiler power supply house, and other warehousing type things. Plus, you in the center of this thing, you've got the site manager's house. So this was a fairly well-developed operation. It's what modelers like to do. You've got 10 pounds worth of modeling effort stuffed into a 5-pound bag. As you come out of Gaston, then you come up here to the corkscrew turntable. Here it is being built. Once it was completed, there were snow sheds, rock sheds at both ends to cover the train cars. But there you got a 50-foot gallows turntable with a 62-foot covering on it. This was so well engineered, you could actually roll the cars onto it, turn the table, and they would roll off the table. You come out of, head down here towards the Joker Tunnel, and it was constructed between 04 and 07 because in about 1898, the mines were so deep, they had the same problem that most mines in Colorado had, water in them. So they quit operation because they had no way to get the water out. So they built the tunnel to drain the mines on Red Mountain. And Yankee Girl was one of the first ones they built. And at this location, here again, you've got an office complex, you got powerhouses, you got coal houses, bunk houses, carpenter shop, blacksmith, boarding house, everything you need. The tunnel was so well engineered that it had a 3-foot fall over a 3-inch fall, over 100 feet. It drained the Yankee Girl and the other mines in the area, so they were able to start producing. And the Yankee Girl went back online in 1907 to 1914 when it basically shut down almost permanently. Once you get past the big U-turn, you move into the thriving metropolis of Ironton at about 10,000 feet, and 300 hardy souls lived there. The passenger service terminated at that point. There was a second Y. The second Y was outside of town on the way to Albany, Colorado, which was actually the end of the line, and that's where the Saratoga or Albany Mill and Smelter was located. What would happen is they'd move ore trains from the mining areas to the smelter. It would get processed some and then turned around and hauled back to Silverton, Colorado, where it interfaced with the Denver Rio Grande and then eventually went, to the rest of the world. Now, you don't need a whole library wall filled with reference material to model this railroad. You need basically 2 books. The Rainbow Route, which I'm sure everybody in this crowd has, and then you need Mike Blazak's workbook number 19, and that gives the standard information and the map that I showed earlier. It has some of these drawings of the railroads. So with those 2 books or reference material, you can build this nice little compact railroad, and it's all basically on the side of a mountain, and you got trees and all the things that you want to do, plus the operation. Now, let's get back to where we really needed to start at. What drove this whole thing was building the Yankee Girl Mine. As I said, for about a 45-year project. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Yankee Girl. It was built initially in 1882 by John Robinson. It's a vertical shaft. And this part of the Silverton area, or San Juan's, however you'd like to prefer it, the shafts were vertical. They were pipe-type structures, like a stovepipe. The ore outcrop was exposed to the surface of the ground. You walk along, you kick the rocks, and you see the ore body. And you plant your mine on top of the ore body, and you drill down and harvest everything out of the pipe. This was one of the highest producers in the area, and it went, like I said, 1,200 feet. And you can see the evidence that it's fairly large. And here's another mine that came out of these little warehouse-looking things. So, but here's the picture of it in about 1885, 86. And here it is in 91. That's the Yankee Girl. Have you started to notice a difference? Again, Yankee Girl, Yankee Girl, Yankee Girl. 2017, that's the Yankee Girl we all see and love. That's the Yankee Girl that starting in about 1980-ish became the most highly photographed mine in the Colorado Rockies. But there is an issue, that shape compared to that shape. Here's some basic facts. We already talked about when it was built, but sometime around 1898, the building got narrower, 6 to 10 feet narrower. The framing for the head frame were external, but there were no outriggers, which we see today. Why did they appear? And why was it rebuilt? Well, naturally, in this environment, the first guess would be fire. And after probably months of sorting it out, I found a one-line article in a Forest Service magazine that said in 1889 there was a fire and it destroyed everything in Gaston. So the Yankee Girl complex went away, nothing there but cinders and rubble. And then in 1910 approximately, we see the first photo of the new Yankee Girl. And lo and behold, looks like the Yankee Girl we all love today, with minus the outriggers. And you can see all these buildings have been removed by the fire. Some of them been built back, a different addition onto the Yankee Girl. But it's interesting, from the turn of the century, 1900 to 1910, unable to find any photos. This one in 1910 is about the only photo I have found of the Yankee Girl in that time period. From 1910 to the 1970s, there are hardly any photos of the Yankee Girl. So Dr. Sloan provided us some information about the outriggers. In a photo of 1973 he published, here is the Yankee Girl. Notice no outriggers. So we know that by 1973, the Yankee Girl still had no outriggers, which we see today. And then Abbott's collection, which this photo was published in Dr. Sloan's book, there seems to be a discrepancy. Here's the Yankee Girl. There's the manager's house. There's everything else. It says it's 1907. 1907, there seems to be a date with this, so there's more mystery and things to adventure with the Yankee Girl. But let's just leave it there and move to what we see today. In 2017, I took a trip there with some people, some friends, and lo and behold, we see the Yankee Girl, which, like I said, has become the most popular photograph mine in the Rocky Mountains, and it has the outriggers. Well, doing some more research, I found that in 1979 to 1980, the historical groups in the area went on a stabilization project to stabilize all the old buildings and mining structures. They weren't going to rebuild them. They were just going to stabilize them. But I found no photos of the work that they did during stabilization. The photos appear after the stabilization. So we figure that by 1979, 1980, that's when the outriggers on the Yankee Girl appeared. And that's when the Yankee Girl has taken on the mystique that we see today. And we model that Yankee Girl as we see it today, not as it was built initially. So getting back to building the Yankee Girl, Berkshire Valley has a 1:48 model. And as I said, Rich cut me the skeleton, or frame as I'll call it, for my 1:24 model. And I put an interior frame into it. I put siding on it and proceeded to build it. It's only a few inches bigger than the 1:48 scale. So now here it is with the outriggers on it. So why the outriggers and when the outriggers? We think we've accomplished for stabilization, not during operations. And we know that it appeared after 1947. So bottom line is the model, the building we all love and the model that we have produced and model after is wrong. If you're a rivet counter, you're modeling the wrong building if you're going to model this railroad. You got to go back to the enclosed structure, which we saw early on from the photographed evidence. So here it is in 2017, and that's what it looks like today, stabilized. It's a unique model. Everybody loves it. And we got a kit of it in a couple scales. And the only place that it served this area, this door right in here, was where the waste rock came. There's a door at the backside where the waste rock also went. And up on the backside at the second level is where the train it connected with the train track that ran right through here. So if the outriggers were here, front and back, you couldn't have been able to basically put the train there anyways. So that's kind of a short, abbreviated history of the Yankee Girl, and we're modeling the wrong thing. But doesn't matter. It's your layout. Build it as you see fit. And you can have a kit already made, so you can model that kit, or you can basically, scratch build the whole thing, and it's in a completely different shape building from the 1800s to what we see today. So the references, Dr. Sloan's book, A Rainbow Route, Corkscrew Turntable. If you want to read an excellent engineering book, Gibbs's 1890 volume of the turntable in the American Society of Civil Engineers gives an excellent accounting of building the turntable. More references by Sloan. He probably has published more on the Silverton area than anybody else. He's an expert. Interesting enough, Dr. Sloan was a geologist. He wasn't an igneous or metamorphic or volcanic geologist. He was a paleontologist, studied fossils, bones, and that type of stuff. But if you have the Rainbow Route, you know that the geology section of that book is outstanding. He's done an outstanding job capturing the geology of it for anybody, even the paleontologist. And then there's Rich and Donna Rands, who basically Berkshire Valley, who built and offered the kit of it and helped me build the skeleton. He built the skeleton so I could build my model. Now that's a short history. Some highlights of the Yankee Girl and the Silverton Railroad. So if you're going to model a small little railroad, the Silverton's got to be it. 16.5 miles long. It's got everything anybody would want. And it's got interesting mines. It's got interesting small buildings. And like I said, you're putting 10 pounds worth of modeling in a 5-pound bag. And it's on the sunny side of the mountain. You can see it all. And if you're really modeling it, the towns are down on the low ground. So if you're building the model, the towns are on the flat, mines are on the slope. So as you're working on the mines or any of the scenery, you're not tearing up the towns. That's just a sideline. So that's the quick and dirty of the Silverton and the Yankee Girl. At some point, there may be a full-blown clinic of the whole Yankee Girl and Red Mountain area, Silverton Railroad, but we'll see when that comes about. So at that point, I'm basically done.
Thanks, Monty. Jerry here. I've been given the onerous task of summing up and thanking you for your presentation. I've actually been up there. You can still see the remains of the turntable up on Red Mountain, if I remember correctly. I was up there with Dwayne Danielson years ago. It was quite an interesting trip.
I knew in my mind that the Yankee Girl we see today really wasn't the Yankee Girl in the book. But it was like my eyes were fooling me because I like the current version better than the original version.
Exactly.
And so here we are building the original version, but we're building the rebuilt version and the version we see today, not during its heyday. And that's a better looking model than just some closed in structure.
It happened. Gerald Harper asked a question. How many times was the shaft deepened to get to the 1,200-foot level?
I believe there were 12 different steps, processes, or stages to get down to that level. And it closed in 1897, right before the fire, because there was so much water in it, they couldn't get anything out. Oh. That's why the tunnel was built. It took them 3 years to build the tunnel.
Wow. Well, thanks again. That was really interesting, Monty, and it was great touching base with you. I haven't seen you in a while.